Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar regarding the fiscal year 2025-26 continued funding application to California State Preschool Program and Prekindergarten and Family Literacy Support, CPKS Contractors. This webinar is being presented by the Early Education Division, EED, on Friday, September 27th, 2024 from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Next slide, please. Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Walters, and I am an analyst with the Contracts and Grants Administration Unit here at the California Department of Education, CDE, Early Education Division, EED. Presenting with me today will be Fiona Lavelle, analyst with the Contracts and Grants Administration Unit, and Yer Tao, EED consultant with the Program Quality Implementation Office, PQI. Assisting us today with our webinar and responding to your questions in the Q&A section of the webinar will be analyst Lindsay Castillo, education administrators Crystal Devlin and Linda Morales, and PQI consultants Sandra Flores and Amy Silva. Please note that the chat feature is disabled during this webinar. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. Participant questions will be displayed there, and you may select the thumbs up icon to upvote questions that you also want answered. Our team will do our best to respond to all questions during the questions and answer portion of the webinar today. The webinar recording and webinar slides will be posted to the CDE CFA webpage after the webinar. Next slide, please. Agenda. Here we have our agenda for today's webinar. Today, we will provide an overview of Management Bulletin 24-09 regarding fiscal year 2025 to 26 continued funding application for current contractors of the California State Preschool Program, CSPP, and Prekindergarten and Family Literacy Support, CPKS program. We will review statutory background for the CFA and the auto renewal process. We will review CFA updates and how to submit the fiscal year 25-26 CFA. We will then review the instructions for completing the CFA and walk you through each section of the CFA. We will provide you with contact information for any questions or technical issues that may arise when completing and submitting the CFA. Then, as time allows, we will respond to frequently asked questions that are being posted in the Q&A feature of this webinar. Then we will close out for the afternoon. Now I will hand it over to Yer Tao to provide an overview of MB 24-09. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jennifer. Management Bulletin NB 24-09 offers our existing California State Preschool Program, also known as CSPP, and Prekindergarten Family Literacy Support, also known as CPKS, contractors the opportunity to request continued funding for fiscal year 2025-26. This Management Bulletin supersedes the CFA information found in Management Bulletin 23-09. In order to be considered for the continued funding for fiscal year 2025-26, CSPP and CPKS contractors must complete and submit the fiscal year 2025-26 CFA by November 1, 2024, no later than 5 p.m. The CFA and all required forms are available to download in the CFA webpage. For your reference, the CFA webpage link will now be shared in the chat box. It is very important for each contractor to review this information as soon as possible to ensure appropriate time and resources are reserved to complete and submit the CFA in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Now we will continue with statutory background information. The CDE administers the CSPP and CPKS programs. Effective July 1, 2021, other state-subsidized early learning programs are administered by the California Department of Social Services, also known as CDSS. The information provided in this webinar is for current CSPP and CPKS contractors only. The California Code of Regulations, Title V, Section 17726D, requires contractors who intend to accept the offer to continue providing services in a subsequent contract period to respond to continued funding application request. Management Bulletin 24-09 provides the instructions and timelines applicable to the fiscal year 2025-26 CFA. Title V, Section 17726E specifies that failure to respond within the timeline stated in the CFA request shall constitute notification to the CDE and EDD of the contractor's intent to discontinue services at the end of the current contract period. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the auto renewal process. CSPP and CPKS contractors who apply for and are approved for continued funding will not need to sign and return a contract to provide services for fiscal year 2025-26. CSPP and CPKS contracts approved for continued funding will be automatically renewed through the CFA process as indicated in Management Bulletin 24-09. Contracts will be renewed in accordance with all applicable federal and state laws, in addition to the contract terms and conditions that will be incorporated into the following contract as applicable. By signing the CFA, your agency indicates that it wishes to automatically renew its current CSPP and/or CPKS contract for the next fiscal year and accept all of the contract terms and conditions, which will be provided to all contractors being renewed for funding no later than June 1, 2025. Contractors may reject the terms of the new contract by providing a written notice to the CDE no later than July 1, 2025. Now, Jennifer will continue to provide an overview of the instructions for completing and submitting the 2025-26 CFA.
Thank you, Yer. I will now review updates to the CFA for fiscal year 25 to 26. First, note that the CFA is no longer being offered in an online format through Snap Survey. It is now available to download as a PDF document. You will download and complete the CFA document the same way you downloaded and completed all other attachments, which are all posted on the CFA webpage. This is to simplify the process and avoid challenges users experienced with the Snap Survey system in previous years. Rather than upload documents and submit online, you will now simply attach all the completed documents to an email and email the CFA package to cfa@cde.ca.gov. One new question has been added this year in Section 2 of the CFA. It asks, does the CSPP operate any sites on tribal reservations or tribal trust lands? And finally, to simplify the CFA, we have reduced the number of signatures required in the CFA itself. Previously, Sections 4, 5, and 6 required signature. This year, the signature of the contractor's authorized representative is required only in Section 6 of the CFA. This signature certifies the accuracy of the entire CFA. Please note that signatures are still required on each of the required attachments. Next slide, please. Next, I will review the instructions for submitting the CFA. The fiscal year 2025 to 26 CFA is due to the CDE EED November 1st, 2024 by 5:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All contractors need to download the CFA and all the required attachments from the CFA webpage. We have put a link to the CFA webpage in the chat. Contractors need to download and save each document on their computer and obtain signatures by the contractor's authorized representative. Next slide. There are two methods of submission. Option 1, email the completed documents to cfa@cde.ca.gov. Documents may be signed electronically or may be printed and signed by hand, scanned, and emailed. Submissions by email are preferred. Note that all email submissions must include the required certification statement provided in the CFA instructions. Your CFA is incomplete without this certification. Option 2 is to mail a paper copy of the documents to the CDE EED. The address is provided here and in the CFA instructions. Regardless of the method of submission, only one copy is required, and all CFAs must be received by 5 p.m. November 1st, 2024, unless an extension has been granted. Please be sure to keep a copy for your own records. Also, please remember any wet signatures should be in blue ink. Next slide, please. Contractors must review the CFA instructions prior to completing the continued funding application, CFA, for fiscal year 2025 to 26. Please refer to the CFA instructions and frequently asked questions, FAQs, posted on the CFA webpage. I will now hand it over to Fiona to walk us through each section of the CFA.
All right, I'm now going to show you each section of the CFA and highlight a few tips or common issues when completing it. This slide shows section 1, contractor information in the CFA, and you will fill in contractor legal name, contractor doing business as DBA only if applicable, headquartered county and vendor number. Then we have executive director name, executive director phone number, and email address. Please note that these need to be the name and contact information of the person listed in the Child Data Management Information System, CDMIS, as the contractor's executive director, which should be the contractor's head executive. Commonly, it's the executive director, superintendent, chancellor, or president. So please check CDMIS to match the executive director information. You'll also enter legal business address, city, and zip code. If you are a local educational agency, legal business address should match the address that appears in the California School Directory or Community College Directory, whichever is applicable. If you are a nonprofit organization, legal business address should match the address that's on file with the Secretary of State. Next is mailing address, city, and zip code. Insert the contractor's mailing address if it's different from the legal business address that you've just entered above. And finally, the contact name, contact title, phone number, and email address. This is the person completing the CFA who can be contacted to address any questions or any corrections needed to the CFA. And now we'll move on to the next section of the CFA. Next slide, please. Section 2, Part 1, Contract and Program Type. Check all applicable boxes indicating the programs that the contractor intends to continue to administer for the fiscal year 2025-26. The contractor agrees to continue implementation of these programs with the funds provided by the CDE. Contract type, select all that apply, CSPP, and if applicable, CPKS. Does the CSPP operate a family child care home education network or FECHN? Select yes or no. And does the CSPP operate any sites on tribal reservations or tribal trust lands? Select yes or no. If yes, please indicate the names of the tribes and tribal affiliated sites. Program type, select all that apply, full day, full year, part day, part year, full day, part year, part day, full year. Just a note here that California Education Code Section 8207 defines a part-day program and a full-day program. You can refer to those definitions in our CFA instructions and our FAQs on the CFA webpage. And you can verify your program type, if you're not sure, by checking your contract. And if you need further clarification, you can contact your assigned PQI consultant. Required document, a completed program calendar, Form EED 9730, is required for all contractors. If the contractor operates both a full day and a part-day program, a separate calendar should be submitted for each one. Next slide, please. All right. Section 2, Part 2, Predicted Enrollment. There are no changes to this section since last year's CFA. Here you'll insert the number of subsidized children your agency expects to enroll with the CSPP contract. For each county, services are provided as applicable. You'll answer how many counties does your agency operate in, and then for each county, enter county name, number of children to be enrolled in part-day CSPP in that county, and number of children to be enrolled in full-day CSPP in that county. Total number of children to be enrolled in the county will automatically calculate. And then at the bottom of this section, total number of CSPP children to be enrolled will automatically calculate based on what you've entered for each county. If you need additional space for more counties, you can attach another sheet. And just a reminder, you are not required to use the funded enrollment calculator tool for this section. This is simply requesting your projection of the total number of subsidized children you expect to be enrolled in your CSPP program for fiscal year 25-26. Next slide, please. Section 3, contractors, officers, and board of directors. There's also no changes to this section since last year's CFA. Does the contractor have a board of directors? Check yes or no. If no, please explain the entity type and the governance structure, including number of owners, partnerships, etc. And list all officers or board members or governing individuals. These may be owners, directors, etc. And attach additional sheets if necessary to list them all. For each governing individual, please enter name, title, telephone number, mailing address, and email address. And please provide unique contact information for each person. And note that all contractors need to complete this section. Next slide, please. Now we're looking at section 4, program narrative. Part A says, please select the box below if the contractor does not have any program or minimum days of operation, MDO, changes. B, if the contractor does have program or MDO changes, please select the types of changes and complete the program narrative change form, EED 3704A. Note, making changes to the MDO does not change the contract maximum reimbursable amount, or MRA. Required document, contractors requesting program and/or MDO changes must also submit a completed program narrative change form, EED 3704A. This form is available on the CFA webpage, and it needs to be signed by the agency's authorized representative. The program narrative change form will be reviewed by your assigned PQI office consultant after you submit it, and they will follow up with you if needed. Next slide, please. This slide shows section 5, subcontract certification. For purposes of this CFA, subcontractor refers to an agency other than the lead contracted agency who provides CSPP services in accordance with the provisions contained in the 5 CCR and the contract terms and conditions through an agreement with the lead agency. A, please select the box below if the contractor does not have any subcontractors. B, please select the box below if the contractor does have subcontractors. Required document with this section, contractors who subcontract CSPP services must also submit a completed subcontract certification form, EED 3704B. This form is also available on the CFA webpage, and it needs to be signed by the agency's authorized representative. If you need additional space to list all the subcontractors or their sites, please feel free to attach additional pages as necessary. And please don't forget to enter the full legal name of each subcontractor agency on the form. Please note that subcontracts listed in the CFA must have already received approval by EED. So if you do not already have written approval for a subcontract, please contact your PQI consultant for approval prior to including it in the CFA. And required subcontract provisions can be found in the contract terms and conditions and in 5 CCR section 17802. Next slide, please. Okay. Section 6 is contractor certification. This section of the CFA contains the required personnel certifications, certification of information in CDMIS, and contractor certifications. The state of California requires any contractor receiving early education and care funding dispersed by the CDE to employ fully qualified personnel as stipulated in the California Education Code of Regulations, Title V, and the contract terms and conditions. By signing this section of the CFA, the contractor certifies that they are authorized to execute the continued funding application, have supervisory authority over the state preschool program, have actual knowledge of the information in the application, and certify that the information in the application is true and correct. By signing the CFA, the authorized representative also agrees to renew the contract under the terms and conditions that will be applicable to fiscal year 25-26. And such contract will be in effect as of July 1, 2025, unless the contractor submits written notice of rejection of the contract to the CDE prior to the effective date of such contracts. Section 6 of the CFA must be carefully reviewed and signed by the agency's authorized representative. I'll say a couple details about what that means. So for public agencies, that is the person identified in the board resolution or board meeting minutes authorizing that person to sign the CFA and the related documents on behalf of the public agency. For non-public agencies like nonprofit, community-based organizations, this would be the person whose title with the agency is executive director, owner, or president, or another person who has been officially authorized by the agency's governing body to enter into contractual agreements on behalf of the agency. So treat the CFA signature like signing a contract when it comes to your agency's requirements for who can sign that. Next slide, please. All right. Continuing with Section 6, Contractor Certification, CSPP contractors are required to review and update all information in the CDMIS and certify under penalty of perjury that the information in CDMIS is complete and accurate as of the date of the certification. This includes the name and contact information for the executive director and program directors, location of offices, location, license number, and license capacity of facility sites and or family child care home providers who serve children through a fetch-in, and the number of children enrolled. The information in the CDMIS becomes part of the agency's contract. So complete and accurate information is critical to the function of the CSPP and the maintenance of your agency's CSPP contract. Incomplete or inaccurate information in the CDMIS can result in an audit finding at the state level and a finding of noncompliance for your agency. Maintenance of complete and accurate information in the CDMIS is the contractor's responsibility. Detailed instructions for logging into the CDMIS and updating this information are provided in the CFA instructions document that's posted on the CFA webpage. And technical support is available by contacting the CDMIS staff at cdmis@cde.ca.gov. Okay, next slide, please. We're now on the final section of the CFA. Section 7 is the CFA checklist. This section provides a checklist to assist contractors with making sure their CFA submission is complete. You'll first indicate your agency type, which helps clarify which documents are required, as public and non-public agencies have slightly different requirements. In this section, you'll simply check the box next to each item that's listed that applies to your agency type to confirm that it is completed and included with your CFA submission. Next slide, please. Okay, now that we've reviewed each section of the CFA itself, I'll share a few tips about the required attachments that also need to be included. All contractors must provide the documents listed here: the continued funding application itself, which is what we just walked through section by section, the CSPP program calendar, Form EED 9730, the California Civil Rights Laws certification, Form CO-005, contractor certification clauses, CCC for short, federal certifications, Form CO.8, and the CDMIS agency information certification. Each of these forms needs to be downloaded, completed, and signed by the contractor's authorized representative. And note that the CDMIS agency information certification is generated by the contractor after logging into CDMIS and completing any updates. There are detailed instructions for generating that form found in the CFA instructions document that is posted on the CFA webpage, and it's also linked directly in the chat on this webinar. Next slide, please. All right, a couple of reminders about the program calendar. That's Form EED 9730. It's the same one-page format as last year. You will check each date that the program will provide services to certified children. If a contractor operates both a full day and a part-day program, a separate program calendar must be completed for each one. Total days of operation calculates automatically at the bottom of the calendar based on which dates you've checked. Total days of operation at the bottom of the calendar needs to match the contractor's current approved minimum days of operation, or MDO, unless you're requesting an MDO change. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to review a couple of items that are only applicable to certain contractors. Only contractors who are local educational agencies, LEAs, must provide the verification of LEA name and address. And that is a copy of the information page from either the California School Directory or the California Community College Chancellor's webpage, whichever is applicable. Please make sure the address that you enter in Section 1 of the CFA for legal business address matches the address that appears on this verification document. So again, Section 1 of the CFA asks for legal business address. Verify that you're entering the same thing that appears on this document, please. Next slide. Public agencies, that includes cities, local education agencies, other types of public entities, must also provide a board resolution, board meeting minutes, or board policy, which authorizes execution of the fiscal year 25-26 CFA. The resolution's purpose is to certify the approval of the governing board of the agency to submit the CFA, to have the agency's contracts renewed if the CFA is approved by CDE. And it also identifies the individuals who are authorized to sign the CFA and the related documents on behalf of the public agency. So the person who is going to sign the CFA and the attachments on behalf of the public agency must be identified on the board document in order for us to accept their signature. Please refer to the resolution that we've provided on the CFA webpage, and I'm going to post a link to that in the chat here as well. Agencies may either use this template or provide an equivalent resolution in their own format or on their own letterhead if preferred. You can refer to these requirements related to the board resolution and the signature authorization in greater detail in the CFA instructions and the FAQs that are posted on the CFA webpage. Next slide, please. Okay, now switching over to what's required for non-public agencies. That would include agencies like nonprofit community-based organizations. Non-public agencies must provide the State of California Payee Data Record, Standard 204. The Payee Data Record supplement, the Standard 205, only applies if the agency's payment address is different from the mailing address that's provided on the 204. If you don't have a different payment address than mailing address, the 205 is not applicable and does not need to be included. For non-public agencies, you also need to include the Secretary of State certification or search results. And make sure, please, that the address you enter in Section 1 of the CFA for legal business address matches the address that appears on the Secretary of State document. Next slide, please. Continuing regarding non-public agencies, a board resolution is not required from a non-public agency if all the CFA documents are signed by the agency's executive director, owner, or president. If an individual with a different title than those listed here is going to sign any of the CFA documents, we do need to see their authority to sign contractual agreements on behalf of the agency. So again, if it's not the executive director, owner, or president and CEO signing, include a board resolution, board meeting minutes, or letter on company letterhead that certifies that this signee has the authority to enter into contractual agreements on behalf of the agency. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to email the CFA inbox or double check in the CFA instructions or FAQs. Next slide, please. Okay, and finally, these are 3 documents that should only be included if they apply to your agency. If they don't apply, there's no need to include them. Only contractors with proposed Program or MDO changes need to include the Program Narrative Change form. That's EED 3704A. Only contractors that have approved subcontracts need to include the subcontract certification form. That's EED 3704B. And local educational agencies applying to be exempt from licensure pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 1596.7920 must provide the application for license exemption. Please note that these forms must be signed by the contractor's authorized representative, and when we receive them, they will be reviewed by your assigned PQI office consultant, and your consultant will follow up with you as needed regarding those. So that concludes the review of our required attachments, and so now I'd like to hand it back over to Jennifer. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Next slide, please. Before we go to questions and answer section of our webinar, I want to review the timeline you can expect for the CFA process this year. The CFA and Management Bulletin 24-09 were released September 3rd, 2024. This instructional webinar is being provided today, September 27th, 2024. The CFA is due to the Early Education Division November 1st, 2024. November 1st, 2024 through February 28th, 2025, Early Education Division staff will review and process the CFAs. This includes corresponding with contractors about any corrections or missing items. CDE Contracts Office receives all the completed CFAs from EED by March 1st, 2025. And finally, the CDE Contracts Office processes all CFAs and fiscal year 2025 to 26 contracts and funding terms and conditions will be issued to contractors no later than June 1st, 2025. Next slide, please. Contact information. Please submit any questions regarding the application and submission process to the CFA team by email at cfa@cde.ca.gov. You may submit programmatic questions to your assigned PQI office consultant, and you may submit fiscal-related questions to your assigned early education nutrition fiscal services appointment analyst. Links are being provided in the chat where you can find the relevant contact information for your region. I'll now turn it over to Yer for a few final reminders.
We have a few quick reminders we are going to share to help avoid delays in the process of the CFA. So one of the biggest delay in the processing of the CFA can be missing or incomplete or resolution. So please plan ahead and put CFA authorization on the board's agenda as early as possible, so it is ready to submit by the due date. Please inform your PQI consultant of any requested CDMIS changes prior to submitting the CFA. PQI receives a lot of CDMIS changes around the time the CFA is due, which can cause delays. Please remember that CDMIS updates can be done throughout the year. The CFA can be delayed if the subcontract certification form is missing or incomplete, or if the new subcontractors are included that were not pre-approved. If you have a new subcontractors that have not been approved by EDD, please reach out to your assigned PQI consultant before submitting the CFA. As a reminder, subcontractor information can be found in the required subcontract provision section in the contract terms and condition and in California Code of Regulation, Title V, Section 177802. For LEAs operating a CFPP, license-exempt classroom must be renewed annually. Per Title V, Regulation Section 17775, for new and existing license-exempt classrooms, as an application for license exemption must be completed, please be sure to read the instructions carefully and include all the required documentation. You can find the application for the license exemption on the CFA webpage. And you can reach out to your assigned PQI consultant with any questions. Now I will hand it back to Jennifer.
Thank you. Next slide, please. We will now take your questions. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen to submit your question. The questions posted by other attendees are displayed in the Q&A. You can use the thumbs up icon to give upvote questions that you want to see answered. Our team will do our best to respond to all questions on today's webinar. We will write answers in the Q&A feature, and we will also unmute ourselves to answer some questions live. If there are any questions we cannot get to today, we will follow up with the individuals after the webinar, and we will update our frequently asked questions on the CFA webpage. Just a warning that while we focus on Q&A, you may periodically hear some brief pauses while we review your questions. Fiona will start us off.
Great, thank you. One of the common questions is, will the slides and recording of today's webinar be shared? The answer is yes. The slides and the webinar recording will both be posted on the CFA webpage within about a week. Some other common questions, I'm going to answer some live from the chat. It says, for the resolution authorizing the continued funding application, who is the individual that signs the forms? It states clerk signature. So the resolution itself is certified by the clerk of the governing board. So whatever the typical official process is for the board to adopt motions and adopt resolutions, that's who needs to sign to certify that that resolution has officially been adopted. When it comes to who can sign the CFA forms, the CFA itself and all the attachments, whomever is designated by the board has the authority to sign. So the board document that you submit to us, the resolution, will tell us who the board has designated or delegated the authority to sign. They typically will choose someone who's a program director, maybe the superintendent, but it's at their discretion. So the resolution itself is signed by the clerk of the governing board to certify that it was in fact passed and adopted. And then the forms that accompany the CFA and the CFA is signed by whomever has been delegated that authority. Next question, please confirm that is the EED contractor data sheet. I think this refers to the certification of the information in CDMIS. The certification form that we're describing is a little different than the contractor data sheet. There are instructions in the CFA instructions document that describes exactly how to log in and generate this form. It's a little different than what the contractor data sheet is. So if the steps in the instructions are not making sense, or you don't have access to each of those functions in CDMIS, please feel free to email us or contact CDMIS and they can assist you. But essentially, the person who has the level of access in CDMIS called super user has the ability to log in and make any updates to the contact information and the other details in the CDMIS. And then there's a button that allows them to generate this form. And essentially the reason for that is to show that the person from your agency has gone into CDMIS, confirmed that all the data is up to date, all the contact information is correct, and then they provide us this form to certify that. Okay. Next question, if I'm approved as the signer for the CSPP contract, this means I can also sign the additional forms, or does that still need to be the superintendent? So I'm going to assume this is from a local educational agency because they're referring to a superintendent here. So the local educational agency, let's say it's a school district, needs to have their board of directors adopt a resolution each and every year that specifically refers to the current CFA. So this year it is the fiscal year 25-26 CFA, and it names and authorizes the folks who can sign the CFA and all the accompanying documents that come along with the CFA. A common question we get sometimes is, can we reuse the board resolution from last year? And unfortunately, no, it needs to be a current resolution each year. Each year, sort of a new contractual agreement is being authorized. So it refers to the current fiscal year and it's signed more recently. So refer to the template that we provide, and that includes all the required language that you would need in order to authorize the person who can sign all the CFA-related documents. Does the school superintendent need to sign the application, or can it be the program director? So the answer to this is that your board that governs your agency has the discretion to designate whomever they would prefer to delegate signature authority to. And they can even list multiple people if, for example, different people might sign different forms, or you're not certain who will be available to sign the forms. But whomever the board designates on the board resolution is who can sign the forms on behalf of a public agency. So if you are a school district, definitely want to make sure that you've introduced that resolution to the agenda for the next board meeting, and make sure that whomever is going to sign the CFA forms is named on the resolution, so that the board officially has delegated them the authority to sign on behalf of your agency. Okay, next question related again to the resolution and signature authority. Ours is a nonprofit with a board. Do we need a board resolution signed if our CEO is signing the documents? What are the cases where a board resolution is needed? So for a nonprofit organization, you're a non-public agency, and that means that the authority to sign contractual agreements on behalf of your agency is presumed for people with a certain title within your organization. That includes the president of your organization or CEO. Those are both accepted interchangeably. So president and CEO can sign without you having to include a resolution. This all assumes that this is in line, of course, with your agency's bylaws. So if there is any particular process required by your agency's bylaws to authorize contracts or to delegate signature authority, just make sure you're following those. But in terms of what we require, a nonprofit can have their president and CEO sign without needing to include a resolution. We would also accept the signature of somebody whose title is owner or executive director. This is only in regards to a private organization, a nonprofit organization. Public agencies like a school district always need that resolution, regardless of who's going to sign it. Okay. And again, I want to refer folks to the instructions for this. We've made an attempt over the last year to spell it out a little more clearly. It's a common area that we get questions about. So hopefully the FAQs and the way they've been updated are helpful now. So do refer to those, but you can always email or contact us and we can talk to you about your specific situation as well. Will you accept electronic signature on a resolution? These are done through Adobe certified documents. Yes, the forms that are included with the CFA and the CFA itself can have an electronic signature through a certified program like Adobe Sign or DocuSign, one of the things where a certification is attached to that verifies the signature. So that's fine to do. Just typing a name using text isn't sufficient because that's not really a certified digital signature. So if you can't do the electronic signature, you can just print the documents out, have someone sign by hand, and then scan and email them to us, or you do have the option of mailing the original copies in. We're just going to stick with the theme of the resolution and the signature authority, if that's okay. Does anyone want to interrupt me? Feel free. It's the next question. Up to 3 people can be designated to sign by the resolution. Yes, if there are multiple people in the agency with the authority to enter into contracts, they can all be recognized on the resolution, or multiple people can be recognized. I don't know, there could be many reasons for that. Just making sure you have the flexibility to have the person sign who will be available at that time, or sometimes you may want a program director to complete one form and a superintendent to complete another. That's up to the discretion of the contractor, but more than one person can be named and designated with the authority to sign. Okay, the executive director always signs our CFA. Do I have to return a resolution authorizing the CFA? That depends on if you are a public or a private organization. If you're a public agency like a school district or a city, you always have to include a resolution, and it needs to be a current resolution, and it needs to be submitted each year. If you are a nonprofit organization, that means you're not a public agency, then the signature authorization rules that apply to the non-public agencies should be followed. Can CFO sign the contract at a nonprofit? Chief Financial Officer. So we tested this last year. Our contracts office is very, very specific. Only the titles that are provided have the presumed authority. So the chief financial officer would not be able to sign unless you've accompanied the CFA with something designating them as having been officially delegated the signature authority to sign on behalf of the agency. So if your aim is to not have to include a resolution and go through that process, if you're a nonprofit, you would want to stick with having the executive director or president CEO sign, or one of the titles that's listed. And just a reminder, that also applies to the payee data record, the standard 204. That is a form that a lot of agencies typically have the CFO sign, or another personnel from accounting. And again, that's considered one of the contractual documents that needs to have a signature by an authorized representative. So same rules apply for who can sign that. For the resolution, can it list the position approved rather than the actual person's name? That is a good question. I believe the answer is yes, but I would like to verify that with our contracts office before I give you a definitive answer, just in case maybe guidance has changed since last year. But I believe the answer is yes, and I will follow up with you. I have a note here on who asked that question, so I can make sure that we get back to you on that. Oh, we got to thank you for the calendar being one page. You're very welcome. There's a question about updating CDMIS now for proposed changes in 25-26. Will this cause an issue? So changes should be reported and approved at the time that they're happening. So if there is a change that you anticipate happening in future months and it hasn't yet officially been approved by your consultant, there wouldn't be a need to preemptively make those changes in CDMIS, but I would suggest just reaching out to your consultant, your PQI consultant, to make sure that they give you information that's really specific to your situation. And I see a question, should data in CDMIS be from a specific date, September or October? So in regards to what the CDMIS agency information certification form looks at, it is as of the date that you generate that form is all the information listed in the CFA instructions up to date and correct. And so that refers mainly to the contact information of your executive director, program directors, your sites, licensing numbers as of the date that you generate that form. You're verifying that the information within it is correct and up to date as of the time you verify it. And if you have other questions related to data around reporting, I would recommend reaching out to your PQI consultant. Oh, here's a good question, a frequent question. Can a county office of education use an existing board policy, or do they need a new board resolution for 25-26? So a county office of education only needs a resolution if they are authorizing someone other than the superintendent to sign the documents. So there's a specific kind of caveat that applies to that type of entity. So it is going to depend on whether or not you're going to be able to have the county superintendent sign all the documents. If the county superintendent themselves will sign everything, you won't need a board resolution to accompany it. If it's going to be anyone with any other title, even a deputy superintendent or another high-level staff member within the office, again, the signature requirements are really specific on which titles are presumed to have that authority. So take a look at the FAQs about County Office of Education requirements. And when in doubt, submitting a resolution is, I think, really helpful for both your records and ours. But if you'd like to email the CFA inbox, I can take a look more specifically at what you submitted last year, and you can let me know who you are anticipating having signed this year, so I can help give you a more detailed answer. Can we still submit a board resolution even if we're a nonprofit to designate authorized persons to sign? Yes. Yes, no problem with that at all. That I think is very common, in fact. So feel free to do that, especially if your agency typically does that to authorize contracts. We don't want to try to supersede any of the policies or requirements that your bylaws require or that your board prefers. So please do feel free to do that. Okay, question about a certain type of agency and are they considered public or non-public? I'm going to follow up specifically with you to make sure that I verify how you're recorded in our system and let you know. Here's another great question. We may not have a board resolution ready by the due date. Can we request an extension? What if we can't submit the CFA documents on time? This is a common reason that extensions are requested, the timing of board meetings and preparing the resolutions and having them adopted. So you may request an extension by sending an email to the CFA inbox at cfa@cde.ca.gov. And please include, of course, your agency name and vendor number and the reason the extension is needed. And please send that extension request as soon as possible and no later than November 1st at 5 p.m. That's the CFA due date. And just be aware if you receive an extension to submit later than the original due date, it may result in some delays in receipt of your contract, but we will be happy to accommodate that request. Is the board of directors the same as the school board? So typically for a local education agency like a school district, yes, the governing body of your agency is, who we mean by board or board of directors. So for different types of entities, that may vary slightly. But yes, for an LEA, typically it is the school board when we say board of directors. We think of it as the governing body, the governing individuals, to try to have a catch-all phrase. If, by the way, anyone is needing to take a look at what they submitted last year and can't, find their copy, and you have questions about this, please feel free to email the CFA inbox, and I'm here to help and happy to look at your specific situation. Okay. Do we need to attach a copy of our board agenda in order to get the extension? So I think this is kind of asking, do we need to kind of back up the information about the timing of the board? We don't require that, that you attach any documentation when you request the extension. So you can just send us an email, provide as much detail as you can. And if we have questions, we'll let you know, but it should be pretty straightforward. Is the authorized representative in the program narrative change form the same as section 6 of the CFA? Yes, anywhere we refer to authorized representative, we're always talking about whomever has been delegated the authority to sign the contracts on behalf of the agency. So different forms don't have different types of requirements for who that authorized representative is or who should sign. It's always going to be the same. Okay, another question. The district board approved delegation of authority in a bulletin In 2015, it doesn't renew until executive director changes. Since district executive director is still the same person, will this still be acceptable? If you are, the contracted agency is a school district, you'll need a resolution no matter what, because we need a resolution that is signed recently and that refers to the fiscal year 25-26 continued funding application specifically. So you would, do just as well to include the person's name in that, since it already needs to be passed, and it should reflect whatever the current policy is of who's authorized to sign. So just remember, school districts, it's always got to be a resolution each year, a new one. We provide an updated template every year to try to help make that a little bit more convenient. And each year we're going to try to get that out as early in the year as we can, because we know folks need time to get that on the board agenda. But yes, you will need a resolution, and that will include the authorizing language, authorizing the submission of the CFA itself and agreeing to have the contracts renewed. And in addition, it names who's authorized to sign it. Once the CFA is completed and signed, who do we send the executed CFA? Oh, okay. And this is a question about how to submit it. So once your CFA is completed and signed, you can email it to the CFA inbox, cfa@cde.ca.gov. And if you prefer or need to send it by mail, that's also an option. So if you take a look in the management bulletin that went out, or the CFA instructions on the webpage, the details on how to do that are there. And you can always email the inbox if you need any assistance. And I see a comment about some difficulty with a form. If there is any form that you feel is malfunctioning or not working correctly, don't hesitate to reach out to the CFA inbox in case there's anything I can do to help or troubleshoot. We used our standard board resolution from our district last year. Can we use that resolution again? So if there's standard language that you include in board resolutions, that's not a problem, but it does need to be a current resolution that refers to fiscal year 25-26, and it needs to specifically have language that authorizes submitting that CFA. So if it's an outdated document, our contracts office, it's not going to accept it. Or if it's boilerplate language that doesn't have any reference in it to the fiscal year 25-26 CFA, it wouldn't meet the requirement. So take a look at our template resolution for the required language. And if you have a standard that you use, just make sure you include the required language from our template somewhere. Or if for some reason you need to have them adopted separately in two different documents, that's okay too, as long as we get both. For the resolution authorizing the continued funding application, it states clerk signature. Will this be signed by our agency clerk for our governing board members? This would be the process by which your agency's bylaws require an adopted resolution to be certified and filed. So typically it's a clerk of the board of directors. If there's a different official who does that role, that's acceptable as well. But it needs to be whomever signature officially certifies it as being officially adopted and filed. And one thing to avoid in case this comes up again is the person who's being authorized to sign also signing the resolution. That's kind of a no-no. So we don't want to have something where like someone has authorized themselves. So that's kind of why the clerk's signature is noted to acknowledge certification on behalf of the board. As a reminder, the recording will be posted on our CFA webpage, and the slides from today's webinar will also be posted on the CFA webpage. Can take a few days, so by the end of next week, we would anticipate having it up. I'm going to take a pause while we look at a few more questions. Oh, someone noted a issue in the subcontract certification form where the county dropdown was not working. I think when that was initially posted, that was a problem, and I corrected it that day. So you may have downloaded a copy really quickly after we sent out the link. If you go back now, you should be able to download a copy where all of the issues have been fixed. But if not, I can email it directly to you. Just feel free to reach out to the CFA inbox if you're having any difficulty finding the corrected version. Oh, and if you wrote it in, that's fine as well. I think I saw that next that you just wrote in the county. That is absolutely fine as well. Okay, well, it looks like we're starting to slow down with the number of questions. And if we have any left that we haven't answered yet, I'll go ahead and follow up right after the webinar. And I have the contact information of the folks who posted those questions, so we should be able to get back to you very soon. Okay, can I maybe hand it back over to Jennifer to close us out?
Okay, thank you. We've come to the end of our presentation on the CFA for fiscal year 25-26. Thank you for all who have joined us today, and thank you for all the important work that you do on behalf of California's children and families. This webinar will be posted to the CFA webpage after the recording has been uploaded. You will have access to the webinar recording and the slides. Both will be posted to the CFA webpage as soon as possible. For further questions, please email cfa@cde.ca.gov. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our webinar.